Common Core is something that we didn't really get for quite some time. And again, it's something we've learned from the 9/12 Project and concerned parents all around the country that have been bringing this to our attention. When we started in on this work, we thought it was pretty bad. The more we do, the worse it becomes. But I want to give you some of the response and then the answers. And we will have at 5 o'clock today, in time for the TV show on The Blaze, we will have all of this information ready for you and who you can contact to help you. But I will tell you, the battle is on, and it is raging. And this is one you cannot lose because of the dire consequences involved. It is a loss of parental sovereignty, of state sovereignty, and it is also a loss of our children into a grotesque system. The firestorm from educators has been enlightening. Because basically what they are saying is, how dare you question the great and powerful Oz? Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Don't you understand? You don't question. This isn't really new. This is the same old tactic that they have been using. But yes, we do understand. We do understand. We understand that you don't want us to question. And we understand when you say, this isn't something new, this has been around for a while. We understand that, too. We understand that this is not from Barack Obama. This is from No Child Left Behind. That's where it started. We know that conservatives have been behind a lot of this, if you can call them that. Jeb Bush is one of the leaders of Common Core. So we know it. But we certainly don't like the fact that you're trying to make it much, 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 much worse. This is why the Republicans and the Democrats make you feel the way you do, that every time you go to the election voting booth, you vote for somebody and you get more of the same. Well, this is a prime example. This came from George W. Bush. This started with George W. Bush, and now it's being made much, much worse with Common Core. Two supposedly right-leaning educators wrote a lengthy defense of Common Core just last week. And we want to thank the American Principles Project for helping us out with the research. But I want to now give you the answers to the questions on Common Core. The article claimed first,
Common Core is not Obama Core, as some suggest. While President Obama often tries to claim credit, the truth is that the development of Common Core was well underway before he took office in January 2009.
First of all, that's just not true. Even though I've never called it Obama Core or alleged that it came solely from the president, the development of Common Core itself didn't happen until 2009.
Well, some argue that states were coerced into adopting Common Core by the Obama administration as a requirement for applying for its Race to the Top grant competition and No Child Left Behind waiver.
Okay, I would imagine when they say some are implying, that would be me. Yes. Some argue that states were coerced because they were coerced. $4.35 billion was earmarked for states who would take the bait. The money was offered in the stimulus package. And, of course, 45 states immediately jumped on it. We warned you not to at the time. We didn't know why it was a bad thing. We just knew this is a bad thing. Don't jump on that money. Now we know. The article continues.
Education policy making and 90% of funding is still handled at the state and local levels. And tying strings to federal education dollars is nothing new. No Child Left Behind, George W. Bush's signature education law, linked federal Title I dollars to state education policy, and states not complying risked losing millions in compensatory education funding.
Okay, so now what does this mean? That we've linked it, and it's been linked since George W. Bush? Yes. Progressive steps. So you can always say it's the frog in the water. Remember, you boil a frog, you just put him in there while the water's cool, and but you throw him in the hot water, and he jumps right out, right? This is nothing new. You've been in that pot for a while. It was cold water. Sure, it might be getting a little warmer now, but it's the same pot. This is more of the George Bush did something sort of like this, so it has to be okay with you guys, right? No. I and you should absolutely reject that line of thinking. By the way, remind me, have you gotten your invitation to the George Bush Presidential Library opening?
I haven't checked my mail today.
It is so weird
not
because
yet.
it's happening
Not
right
yet.
here.
Oh, that's right.
It's happening here in Texas. And like everybody I know.
You wreck the guy all the time.
No,
Why would he invite you to his freaking library?
I know that, but remember, I'm the big George
you're
Bush supporter. I'm the big guy who loves George W. Bush. No.
George Bush did it. Why would you loved it that?
No, I didn't.
No.
I wrecked him all the time. I continue to wreck him all the time. Just because it was bad under a Republican doesn't mean we're supposed to like it when it was a Republican. And it doesn't mean also that you make things exponentially worse. This is progressivism. It was a progressive move under George W. Bush. It is a progressive nightmare under this president.
The article continues, perhaps the clearest evidence, I love this, perhaps the clearest evidence that states can still set their own standards is the fact that 5 states have not adopted Common Core. Some that have adopted it might opt out, and they shouldn't lose a dime if they do.
They shouldn't. I love this. This is great.
Yeah.
Seeing and hearing this kind of ridiculous nonsense, I can't help but wonder if this was written by maybe a 5th grader that, will be tested soon. The fact that 90% of the states took the money and the program, that's your clearest evidence that states can still set their own standards? I mean, that's frightening. I mean, I hope the two of the experts that wrote this defense aren't actually involved in the education of our children. The bribe kids worked for 90% for those who are offered the bribe. And that proves that bribes don't work. First of all, Texas is one of those states that opt out. We got, instead, C-Scope.
Yeah.
Just as bad. And the Republicans are doing C-Scope. Just because some have adopted might opt out. Listen to that. Some have adopted, and they might opt out. And they shouldn't lose a dime if they do. Okay. They might opt out, and monkeys might fly out of my pants. And if they do, I shouldn't lose a dime. Have the two of you right-leaning educators seen a single news report in the last 10 years? Because there's a lot of stuff that shouldn't happen that has. I mean, let me tell you something. You shouldn't fly airplanes into buildings. In fact, it wasn't they shouldn't. That will never happen. They deny in this article that there is any need for concern over the leftist indoctrination. Common Core is funded by Bill and Melinda Gates and Linda Darling Hammond, an education advisor for Barack Obama's campaign. Oh, well, pardon me. If you got Bill and Melinda Gates and the education advisor for Barack Obama, I don't know why I'd be a tad skeptical of that group. Common Core also shifts away from classic literature and allows for the reading of informational texts. Now, what is informational texts? And by the way, it shifts as the years progress. When you're in first grade, you read fewer and fewer informational texts, and you read more of the classic literature that is approved. But by the time you hit high school, I think you're at 60%, or is it 80% of informational texts? And what are the informational texts? Those are handbooks from the EPA on how to make sure that your siding and your insulation is good in your house. Who in their right mind wants to read the government handbooks?
And that's what you're replacing classic literature with.
Moby Dick with an informational text. Now, They're not saying no Moby Dick. You'll still have 20% of that. So they can get away with saying, no, we're not replacing Moby. We're not taking any of that out. They can read that if they want. You just will only have 20 or I don't remember the actual number, 20 or 40% of that. The rest are EPA guidelines. Really? This will invite greater and greater indoctrination and bias in the selection and teachings of the texts. You're narrowing things down. You've only got 20% or 40% that is going to be able to be a classic by the time they're in high school. And what kid will learn love of reading from reading any government handbook? What kid will learn anything except to go dead inside? The article, co-written by Kathleen Porter McGee, she's a fellow at the Fordham Institute. She makes the claim the Fordham Institute has carefully examined Common Core and compared it with existing state standards, and it's found that for most states, Common Core is a great improvement with regard to rigor and cohesiveness. Now, what she doesn't mention is that the Fordham Institute received $5.7 million from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation since 2003. Bill and Melinda Gates are pushing for Common Core, so they give her almost $6 million. $2.4 million since 2009, and they surprisingly come out and support Common Core. The authors go on to state that Common Core simply delineates what children should know at each grade level and describes the skills that they must acquire to stay on course through college or career readiness. That's not a curriculum. It's up to the school districts to choose curriculum that will comply with the standards. So if we're testing about Moby Dick, all we're doing is we're testing Moby Dick. We got a bunch of Moby Dick questions. You don't have to teach Moby Dick. You can teach whatever you want. Well, if I choose not to teach Moby Dick, then I think we'll all flunk. It makes no sense. They conveniently leave out just a few facts. As Bill Gates described the matter to the National Conference of State Legislators, the idea is that, quote, when the tests are aligned to common standards, the curriculum will have to line up as well, end quote, Bill Gates.
Just what we've been saying.
First, through its Race to the Top program, and then through its No Child Left Behind waiver program, the administration has pushed the states into adopting the Common Core. Tests align with Common Core and evaluation of teachers, schools, districts, and states based in large part on how students perform on Common Core tests. This is a high-stakes enforcement program. That's what it is. The assessment, otherwise known as standardized testing, are integral part of the Common Core system because assessments are meant, among other things, to measure what a student has learned. The department wants assessments that are aligned with Common Core standards. The assessments would serve not only as an evaluative tool, but also as an enforcement tool to ensure that the state is actually implementing the standards. Here, Race to the Top request for applications required that states, as one of the competition's absolute priorities, participate in a consortium of states that is working toward jointly developing and implementing common high-quality assessments as defined in this notice, aligned with the consortium's common set of K through 12 standards. And to this end, the stimulus bill provided hundreds of millions of dollars worth of incentives. The battle, my friends, is on. The missiles are coming, not just from the left, but also the right, as we fight this insidious menace to our children and to our families. And that's exactly what it is. We are going to have a difficult time discerning who our allies are. This article appeared in the National Review Online, attacking me and Michelle Malkin for daring to speak out against Common Core, defending this horrific mess, a mess that is without any question the darling of Barack Obama. This article came from scholars who supposedly are right-leaning. What is their motivation? I have no idea. I don't know them. I've never heard of either of them. But the point is, the shells will come from both sides. So you're going to have to do your own homework, unlike you've ever done before. You're going to have to know what you're talking about. The defense of Common Core doesn't even mention all of the data mining that will take place for Microsoft, the bio wristbands they want to use on our kids, the FCAT scans that are in the Department of Education's own paperwork, the rest of the 1984 type monitoring systems, all of it, of course, is simply going to be done to help your children. It will help educators help your kids. It will make them safer, smarter, more secure. This is the progressive movement coming in for the kill. And believe me, if we don't stop it, this will be the kill. But we can't and we won't allow it.